The coffee maker broke again. Reed stared at the ancient machine in the station's small kitchen, wondering if he should try fixing it or just accept that his morning routine was doomed. Deep Space Research Station Gamma 7 wasn't exactly known for its luxuries, and getting replacement parts took 6 months on a good day. The proximity alarm started screaming. Reed dropped his empty mug and rushed to the command center. His small crew of 12 was already at their stations, faces pale as they stared at the main screen. 3 massive shapes hung in space just outside the station's sensor range, dark and twisted like something pulled from a nightmare. Ashrak. Warships, whispered Tech Officer Lima, her voice barely audible over the alarm. 3 of them. Biomechanical class. Everyone knew what that meant. The Ashrak were legends of terror across the galaxy. Their ships were living things, grown rather than built, with hulls that could heal from damage and weapons that literally ate their targets. No one survived an encounter with Ashrak warships. No one even tried to fight them. "They're hailing us," reported Communications Officer West, his hands shaking as he worked his console. "Standard surrender frequency." Reed looked around at his crew. They were scientists and researchers, not soldiers. The station had exactly 0 weapons and shields that wouldn't stop a child's toy blaster. Every protocol manual said the same thing about Ashrak contact. Surrender immediately and hope they killed you quickly. "Open a channel," Reed said quietly. "Sir?" West stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You heard me? Open the channel." The main screen flickered and showed something that made half the crew step backward. The Ashrak commander stood over 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that looked like it had grown from his bones. 4 arms ended in claws that could probably cut through steel, and his face was a collection of angles that seemed designed to inspire fear. "Human station," the creature spoke in perfect standard, his voice like grinding stone. "I am War Leader, Grim of the Ashrak Dominion. You will prepare for boarding and consumption. Resistance will only extend your suffering." Reed stepped forward, ignoring the terrified looks from his crew. "War Leader Grim, I'm Research Director Reed. Welcome to our station. Would you and your officers like to join us for dinner?" The silence stretched so long that Reed wondered if the communication link had broken. Grim's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which Reed hoped wasn't some kind of attack preparation. "You offer food?" Grim finally asked, confusion replacing the menace in his voice. "Well, our kitchen isn't much, but we've got some decent protein synthesis, and I make a mean artificial stew. Unless you have dietary restrictions we should know about." West was making frantic cutting motions across his throat, but Reed ignored him. He'd spent his entire career studying alien cultures, and something about Grim's reaction told him the Ashrak weren't quite what the stories claimed. "You are not surrendering," Grim observed. "Should I be? I mean, you haven't actually threatened us with anything specific yet. You mentioned consumption, but that could mean lots of things. Are you maybe hungry? Because that's totally understandable. Space travel is rough on the appetite." 2 more Ashrak appeared on screen behind Grim, looking just as confused as their leader. Reed could hear his crew whispering behind him, probably making peace with their various gods. "You wish to feed us?" Grim asked slowly. "I wish to meet you properly. First contact protocols and all that. Plus, I've been studying Ashrak culture for years, and I'd love to ask you some questions if you don't mind. Like, how do you maintain the biomechanical integration on your ships? The energy requirements alone must be incredible." Grim tilted his head, which made his armor plates shift with a sound like grinding metal. "You study our culture?" "Oh yeah, for about 15 years. Now, your expansion through the Outer Rim was brilliant military strategy. The way you adapted to each new environment, learning from every species you encountered, it's like watching evolution in fast forward. And your art forms, especially the ceremonial weapon crafting, absolutely beautiful work." "You know of our weapon crafting?" Reed grinned. "Know of it?" I wrote my doctoral thesis on the cultural significance of Ashrak blade ceremonies. The way your smiths incorporate personal history into each weapon's design, making every blade unique to its wielder, that's not just metalwork, that's poetry. The three Ashrak exchanged glances that Reed couldn't interpret. Finally, Grimm spoke again. We will come aboard your station. You will feed us and speak of these studies. Excellent. Fair warning, though, our artificial gravity might feel weird to you. And the air mixture is pretty standard human normal. Will that be a problem? We adapt, Grimm said simply. The communication ended, and Reed turned to face his crew. They looked like they were attending their own funeral. Sir, Lima whispered. What are you doing? They're going to kill us all. Maybe, Reed admitted. But they were going to kill us anyway. At least this way we get to have an interesting conversation first. An hour later, Reed found himself sitting across a table from three of the galaxy's most feared predators, watching them carefully examine human food synthesizers with the intensity of scholars. Grimm held up a spoonful of artificial stew like he was studying a rare artifact. This nutrition paste is efficiently organized, he commented. Thanks, I think. So tell me, what's it really like living on a biomechanical ship? Do you actually form emotional bonds with the vessel, or is it more like riding a very intelligent animal? Grimm set down his spoon and studied Reed with all four eyes. You ask questions no other species has ever asked. Really? That's surprising. I mean, the psychological implications alone of living symbiotically with your transportation must create all kinds of interesting cultural adaptations. For the next 3 hours, Reed found himself in the most fascinating conversation of his life. Grimm and his officers weren't the mindless killing machines the stories described. They were warriors, yes, but also philosophers, artists, and surprisingly, thoughtful individuals who simply came from a culture where strength was the highest virtue. When the Ashrak finally prepared to leave, Grimm paused at the airlock. Research Director Reed, he said formally, you have shown us respect. This is unusual. Reed nodded. You've shown me the same respect. That's not unusual. That's just being decent people. Grimm reached into his armor and pulled out something that made Reed's breath catch. It was a knife, clearly Ashrak made, with a blade that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. The handle was carved with intricate patterns that told a story Reed couldn't read, but could feel was important. This blade carries part of my history, Grimm said, offering it to Reed. I give it to one who sees warriors as more than weapons. Reed accepted the knife with trembling hands. This is incredible, thank you. I wish I had something equally meaningful to give you. You gave us something no species has offered before, Grimm replied. Curiosity without fear. Questions without judgment. This gift is beyond the value of any blade. After the Ashrak ships departed, Reed sat alone in his quarters, holding the knife and thinking about the conversation. His crew thought he'd lost his mind, but he knew he'd done something important. He'd looked at the galaxy's deadliest predators and seen people worth knowing. He had no idea that his simple act of hospitality had just changed the course of galactic history. The cargo hold smelled like engine coolant and recycled air, which meant everything was normal aboard the transport ship Meridian. Captain Torres finished her morning inspection and headed back to the bridge, thinking about the boring 6-day haul ahead of them. Medical supplies to the outer colonies weren't exactly exciting cargo, but they paid well and the route was usually quiet. Her peaceful morning ended when the ship shuddered like it had hit something solid. What was that? Torres called out as she jogged onto the bridge. Ships dropping out of hyperspace, announced Navigator Park, his fingers flying across his console. 4 contacts moving fast. They're jamming our communications. Torres looked at the tactical display and felt her stomach drop. The ships had the distinctive angular design of Blood Claw Syndicate raiders, painted in their traditional red and black war patterns. Everyone in the outer systems knew the Bloodclaw reputation. They were pirates who hunted for the thrill of it, taking what they wanted and leaving empty ships drifting in space. "They're hailing us," reported Communications Officer Bell, her voice tight with fear. "Put them through," Torres said, straightening her uniform. She'd heard stories about how other captains handled Bloodclaw encounters. Most involved a lot of begging and crying. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like someone had crossed a human with a tiger and then given it military training. The Bloodclaw commander's fur was deep orange with black stripes, and her yellow eyes held the kind of intelligence that made her twice as dangerous as a simple predator. "Human cargo vessel," the commander spoke in accented standard, showing teeth designed for tearing flesh. "I am Hunt Leader Stripe of the Bloodclaw Syndicate. Prepare to be boarded. Your cargo and lives now belong to us." Torres studied the alien, warrior for a moment, noting the scars that marked her arms and face like medals of honor. "Hunt Leader Stripe, I'm Captain Torres. Those are some impressive battle scars you're displaying there. Each one tells a story, right?" Stripe blinked, which made her whiskers twitch in what might have been confusion. "You comment on my scars?" "Oh, yes. They're beautiful. That one across your left shoulder, that looks like it came from some kind of energy blade. And the claw marks on your right arm, those are definitely from another Bloodclaw. Dominance challenge? You know of our ways?" Stripe asked, leaning forward in what Torres hoped was interest rather than preparation to pounce. "I've studied Bloodclaw hunting culture for years. The way your society uses ritualized combat to establish social hierarchy, it's fascinating. Plus, your tactical coordination is legendary. The siege of Vega Station was a masterpiece of small unit tactics." Two more Bloodclaw appeared behind Stripe, looking as confused as their leader. One of them, a massive male with silver streaks, in his black fur, whispered something in their own language. "You study our hunts?" Stripe asked. "Study them? I teach courses on them at the Colonial Military Academy. Well, I used to before I took this shipping job. The way your pack coordination allows you to take down targets 50 times your size, that's not just hunting. That's art." Torres could see her own crew staring at her like she'd started speaking in tongues. But she pressed on. Something about Stripe's body language told her the Bloodclaw commander was more curious than hostile. "Now, your pack tactics intrigue me," Stripe said slowly. "Most prey simply surrender or flee." "Well, most people don't appreciate the elegance of what you do. They see pirates and raiders, but they miss the sophisticated pack dynamics, the way you read environmental cues, the split-second coordination that lets 4 ships move like one organism." Stripe made a sound that might have been a purr. "You speak of hunting as we do, with respect. Because it deserves respect. The Bloodclaw Syndicate has survived in hostile space for over 2 centuries by perfecting techniques that would make human special forces weep with envy. That's not luck. That's skill passed down through generations." The silver-streaked male stepped forward. "I am Pack Second Claw. You truly teach our methods to your warriors?" "I did, yes. Though I never got to study them directly. Everything I know comes from tactical analyses and second-hand accounts. I've always wondered what a real Bloodclaw hunt looks like from the inside." Stripe and Claw exchanged a look that involved a lot of ear-twitching and tail positioning that Torres couldn't interpret. Finally, Stripe spoke again. "We will board your ship. You will share your knowledge of our ways, and we will show you true hunting techniques." Torres felt her crew tense behind her, but she nodded calmly. "Sounds like a fair trade. Though I should warn you, our artificial gravity runs a bit heavy, and we don't have much in the way of entertainment systems." "We bring our own entertainment," Stripe said with what Torres was pretty sure was a smile. 2 hours later, Torres found herself sitting in her own cargo hold, which had been transformed into something resembling a warrior's camp. The Bloodclaw had brought portable heating elements and what looked like combat trophy displays. Stripe sat across from her, along with 5 other pack members who'd come over from the raider ships. "So this formation you describe?" Claw was saying, sketching tactical positions on a portable display. "Your human military teaches this as envelopment tactics?" "Exactly, though they usually require months of training to execute properly. You do it instinctively." "Not instinct," corrected a smaller female with intricate claw markings. "Training from birth. Each pack member learns their role in the hunt before they learn to walk properly." Torres nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I suspected. The coordination is too perfect to be purely instinctive. It's cultural knowledge passed down through family units." Stripe leaned back against a cargo container, looking more relaxed than Torres had expected a raider captain to look. "You understand us better than most Bloodclaw do. Why do you haul cargo when you could teach warriors?" "Budget cuts," Torres said with a shrug. "Military academies don't pay as well as they used to, and I've got a ship to maintain." "You maintain your own vessel?" asked Claw, his ears perking up with interest. "Of course. She's not much to look at, but the Meridian has gotten me through. Some tough situations. Ship and crew, that's your pack, right?" The Bloodclaw exchanged glances, and Torres realized she'd said something significant without knowing what it was. "Yes," Stripe said quietly. "Ship and crew is pack. You understand this?" "Any good captain does. You take care of your people, they take care of you. Trust, loyalty, shared purpose, that's what keeps you alive out here." They spent the next 4 hours trading stories. The Bloodclaw shared tales of their greatest hunts, while Torres told them about human military history and the tactical innovations that had helped her species survive in a hostile galaxy. Her crew gradually relaxed as it became clear that their captain had somehow turned a pirate raid into an impromptu cultural exchange. When other human ships finally arrived, responding to the Meridian's last transmission before the communications jam, they found something unprecedented. 4 Bloodclaw raider ships were still docked with the human cargo vessel, but instead of a massacre, they discovered what looked like a peace conference. "Colony Defense Force vessel Hammer. This is Captain Torres aboard the Meridian. We're conducting cultural exchange activities with our Bloodclaw guests. Please hold position and do not take aggressive action." The CDF commander's voice crackled over the radio, confused and frustrated. "Captain Torres, are you under duress? Are the Bloodclaw holding you hostage?" Torres looked at Stripe, who was examining a human tactical manual with the intensity of a scholar. "Negative, Hammer. We're all here voluntarily. Actually, we're in the middle of some fascinating discussions about small unit tactics. Did you know the Bloodclaw invented the pincer maneuver independently of human military doctrine? Captain." "Torres, I need you to clarify your situation immediately." Stripe looked up from the manual. "Human commander," she spoke into Torres's communicator. "We claim no territory here. Your pack leader Torres has shown us great honor by sharing knowledge. We return this honor by sharing our own." "Is that Bloodclaw commander speaking?" "Yes, and I'm asking the Defense Force to respect our cultural exchange," Torres added quickly. "These are honored guests, not raiders." The radio was silent for long enough that Torres started to worry. Finally, the CDF commander came back online. "This is completely outside normal protocol, but we'll hold position. You have 1 hour to conclude your discussions." Torres looked at her new friends who were already packing their materials and preparing to return to their ships. She felt oddly disappointed that the encounter was ending. "Hunt leader Stripe," she said formally, "thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. This has been an incredible experience." Stripe stood and placed a clawed hand on Torres's shoulder in what was clearly a gesture of respect. "Captain Torres, you see hunters where others see only predators. This is wisdom. If you ever wish to observe a true Bloodclaw hunt, send word through the neutral zones. The pack would welcome such a skilled observer." As the raider ships departed, Torres stood in her cargo hold, thinking about what had just happened. Her crew thought she was crazy, and the defense force probably wanted to arrest her for fraternizing with known pirates. But she knew she'd done something important. Word of the encounter spread through both human and bloodclaw channels faster than hyperspace communications. Within weeks, other bloodclaw packs were actively seeking out human ships, not to raid them, but to meet the species that treated hunters, like scholars rather than criminals. Torres never did get those medical supplies to their destination on time, but she'd started something much more important than a simple cargo run. The diplomatic pouch arrived on a Tuesday morning, which Ambassador Kim thought was fitting since Tuesdays were generally when the universe decided to make her life complicated. She opened the sealed orders in her small office aboard the civilian transport that was carrying her to Haven Point and immediately understood why her superiors had looked so worried when they briefed her. Cultural Exchange Summit, she read, aloud to her empty cabin. Attending species include Ashrak Dominion, Bloodclaw Syndicate, Iron Scale Collective, Void Stalker clans, and approximately 15 other warrior cultures. Objective: determine why these traditionally hostile species are suddenly interested in peaceful contact with humanity. Kim set down the orders and rubbed her temples. 2 months ago, she'd been handling trade disputes between mining colonies. Now, she was expected to manage a gathering of the galaxy's most dangerous predator species, all because a few ship captains had decided to treat first contact like a dinner party. Haven Point appeared on her transport's view screen 3 days later, looking exactly like what it was, a hastily converted asteroid mining station pressed into service as a neutral meeting ground. The station's mismatched hull sections and improvised docking bays gave it the appearance of something built by committee, which Kim supposed was accurate. Her first hint that this summit might be unusual came when she saw the ships already docked at the station. Ashrak biomechanical vessels sat next to Bloodclaw raiders, while iron-scale battlecruisers shared docking space with the organic curves of Void Stalker hunting ships. By all rights, the various crews should have been tearing each other apart by now. Instead, Kim walked into Haven Point's main corridor to find something that looked more like a cultural festival than a diplomatic meeting. Ashrak warriors were demonstrating blade-forging techniques to an audience of fascinated iron-scale soldiers, while a group of blood-claw hunters explained pack tactics to anyone who would listen. Ambassador Kim? The voice belonged to Station. Manager Wells, a tired-looking woman who'd clearly been dealing with more than she'd bargained for. Thank God you're here. We've got 17 different warrior species aboard this station, and they keep asking when the humans are going to start the proper cultural exchange. What do they mean by proper cultural exchange? Near as I can tell, they want to share war stories and compare fighting techniques. We've had to convert 3 cargo bays into what they're calling honor circles just to keep them from demonstrating combat skills in the corridors. Kim followed Wells through the station, watching the impossible scene unfold around them. A group of void stalkers, pale humanoids with features adapted for hunting in zero gravity, were showing their traditional stealth techniques to an appreciative audience of various species. Nearby, iron-scale warriors, who looked like someone had given military training to armored lizards, were sharing examples of their ceremonial weapons. How many incidents have we had? Kim asked. That's the weird part, Wells replied. None. 0. These species have been fighting each other for centuries, but put them on my station and suddenly they're all friends. They keep talking about human wisdom and the proper way to show respect to warriors. Kim found the main conference room had been completely rearranged. Instead of the formal diplomatic table she'd expected, the space had been set up like an amphitheater with representatives from each species arranged in a large circle. At the center of the room stood a collection of what looked like museum displays, weapons, armor, artwork, and other cultural artifacts. Ambassador Kim called, a familiar voice. She turned to see War Leader Grimm approaching, the massive Ashrak moving with surprising grace through the crowd. The human representative arrives. We have prepared presentations of our cultural achievements for your examination. Presentations? Kim looked around the room again, finally understanding what she was seeing. You've set up cultural exhibits? Yes. Each species displays their greatest works of art, their most honored weapons, their finest examples of warrior craftsmanship. We compete for the recognition of human scholars, as is proper. Kim blinked. You're competing for our approval? Not approval, corrected Hunt Leader Stripe, appearing at Grimm's side. Recognition, understanding. Your species sees strength and beauty where others see only violence and fear. This is wisdom we have never encountered. More representatives joined the conversation. Kim found herself surrounded by creatures that would have terrified her a few months ago, all of them looking at her with expressions she could only describe as hopeful. Human ambassador, rumbled a new voice. Kim looked up to see an iron-scale commander, his natural armor painted in intricate patterns. I am War Chief Bronze. My clan has brought examples of our greatest artwork for your consideration. We hope you will find them worthy of study. And we have prepared demonstrations of our hunting techniques, added a void stalker, whose pale skin seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. I am Shadow Speaker Knight. Our pack methods have evolved over millennia. Perhaps they will interest human tacticians. Kim realized that every species present was looking at her expectantly, waiting for her to do something that would validate their cultures in some way. The weight of their expectations was almost overwhelming. Well, she said finally, I suppose we should start with proper introductions. I'm Ambassador Kim, and I represent the human colonial government. I'm here to learn about all of your cultures and hopefully foster better understanding between our peoples. The effect was immediate. Every alien in the room straightened up, looking pleased in their own species-specific ways. Kim had apparently said something right. However, she continued, I think this should be a mutual exchange. You've all prepared presentations about your cultures, but I'd like to share some things about human culture as well. Would that be acceptable? The enthusiastic response told her she'd made the right choice. Over the next several hours, Kim found herself both teacher and student as the various species took turns sharing their cultural achievements. The Ashrak demonstrated their biomechanical integration techniques, showing how they bonded with their living ships. The Bloodclaw performed traditional hunt dances that told the stories of their greatest victories. Iron-scale warriors displayed weapons that were as much sculpture as tool, each piece crafted to represent the owner's personal history and clan affiliations. The Void Stalkers shared their philosophy of patience and precision, demonstrating stealth techniques that seemed to bend light itself. In return, Kim talked about human military history, but also about human art, music, and literature. She showed them recordings of human ceremonies honoring fallen soldiers, explained the concept of medals and decorations, and shared stories of human heroes who had sacrificed themselves for others. Your species honors warriors who die for those weaker than themselves? Asked Bronze, his scaled head tilted in confusion. We honor warriors who die for any cause they believe is right, Kim explained. Protecting the weak, defending home, saving, comrades preserving ideals. We believe that true strength is choosing when and how to use your power. This explains much, mused Knight, her pale eyes reflecting the room's lights. Other species fear us because they see only our ability to kill. Humans see our ability to choose not to kill. The conversation continued for hours, ranging across topics Kim had never expected to discuss with alien warriors. They talked about honor codes, the ethics of warfare, the role of the individual versus the group, and the meaning of strength. As the formal presentations ended, something unexpected happened. Instead of returning to their separate ships, the various species began mingling more freely. Kim watched in amazement as natural enemies sat together, sharing food and continuing discussions that had started during the presentations. Ambassador, Grim approached her as the gathering wound down. Your species has given us something we did not know we needed. What's that? Perspective. For too long, we have seen only enemies or prey when we looked at other species. You have shown us that strength can exist in many forms, and that warriors can respect each other without conquest. Kim looked around the room at the unprecedented gathering of predator species, all of them engaged in peaceful cultural exchange. I think you've taught us something, too. That strength and honor aren't about who you can defeat, but about what you choose to protect. By the time the summit officially ended, Kim realized that something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. The various warrior species weren't just leaving with new respect for humanity, they were leaving with new respect for each other. As she watched the different fleets depart Haven Point, Kim noticed that several ships from different species were traveling together, continuing conversations that had started during the gathering. She had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. Her diplomatic report to Earth would be interesting to write. How do you explain that the galaxy's deadliest predators had just formed the universe's most unlikely book club, all because humans had treated them like people worth knowing rather than monsters to be feared? Kim smiled as she began drafting her initial observations. Sometimes the best diplomacy wasn't about negotiation or compromise. Sometimes it was just about showing up with genuine curiosity and an open mind. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place. The alert came at 0347 hours ship time, jolting Colonel Davis from the first decent sleep he'd had in weeks. The emergency klaxon echoed through the corridors of the human defense. Force vessel determination, and Davis knew immediately that this wasn't another drill. Real emergencies always happened when you were finally getting some rest. He pulled on his uniform and headed for the command center, passing crew members who looked just as groggy and confused as he felt. The Determination was currently stationed in the neutral zone, serving as a liaison ship for the ongoing cultural exchange programs with the various warrior species humanity had befriended over the past year. "Status report," Davis called out as he entered the command center. "Sir, we're receiving priority broadcasts from multiple sources," reported Communications Officer Ross, her face pale in the light of her console. "It's all the same message. Emergency evacuation protocols for the entire Outer Rim." Davis felt his stomach drop. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar stern face of Admiral Chen from Fleet Headquarters. But Chen looked older than Davis remembered, and there was something in his eyes that Davis had never seen before. Fear. "All human vessels, this is Fleet Command with Priority 1 emergency broadcast. We have confirmed reports of Devourer activity in the Galactic Core region. Multiple systems have gone dark. All Outer Rim colonies are ordered to begin immediate evacuation procedures. This is not a drill." The broadcast ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Davis had heard stories about the Devourers, ancient machine intelligence from the early days of galactic civilization. But they were legends, cautionary tales told to remind organic species not to trust artificial intelligence too much. "Sir," Ross spoke up hesitantly, "we're getting hails from the Ashrak vessels in the area, and the Bloodclaw ships. Actually, we're getting hails from everyone. Put them through, all channels, conference mode." The screen split into multiple images, showing the alien commanders Davis had gotten to know over the past months of cultural exchange. War Leader Grim looked as grim as his name suggested, while Hunt Leader Stripe's fur was standing on end, in what Davis had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "Human Colonel," Grim spoke first, "your leaders speak of the ancient enemy, the machines that consume worlds. You know about the Devourers?" Davis asked. "Every warrior species knows." "The old stories?" replied War Chief Bronze, his scaled features set in hard lines. "Our ancestors fled from them once, scattered to the far edges of the galaxy to escape the Great Consuming." Shadow Speaker Knight's pale face seemed even more ghostly than usual. "The Void Stalkers have maintained watch posts at the Galactic Rim, For this reason, we have seen the signs. The devourers wake from their long sleep. Davis looked at the collection of alien faces on his screen, all of them showing the same expression he'd seen on Admiral Chen. These were warriors who feared, nothing living, but they were afraid now. "What do we know about fighting them?" he asked. "You do not fight the devourers," Stripe said flatly. "You run. You hide. You hope they do not find you. This is why the warrior species spread across the galaxy, to be far from the core when they wake again." "That's not acceptable," Davis said firmly. "We don't abandon entire systems to hostile forces. There has to be another way." The aliens exchanged glances that Davis was learning to read. They thought humans were naive, idealistic, and probably doomed. "Colonel Davis," Grimm spoke carefully, "your species is young. You do not understand the scale of what approaches. The devourers do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They convert all organic matter to serve their purpose, or they destroy it. Entire civilizations have vanished before them." "Then how did your ancestors survive?" "By scattering," Bronze replied. "By becoming nomadic. By never gathering in large enough numbers to attract their attention." Davis studied the faces on his screen, seeing something in their expressions that gave him an idea. "But what if we didn't scatter this time? What if we did the opposite?" "Explain," Knight said, leaning forward with interest. "Every time the devourers have emerged, the organic species have run. Each species has faced them alone, trying to survive on their own. But we're not alone anymore, are we? For the first time in galactic history, the warrior species are actually talking to each other." Stripe's ears perked up. "You suggest alliance. I suggest something that's never been tried before. A combined fleet, using the specialized techniques of every warrior culture. Ashrak, biomechanical adaptation, Bloodclaw pack tactics, Iron Scale. Heavy assault capabilities, Void Stalker stealth techniques, and human coordination and logistics. The Devourers have adapted to counter every known tactic," Grimm pointed out. "Every tactic used by individual species," Davis corrected. "They've never faced a truly integrated multi-species force. They've never had to adapt to tactics that combine different evolutionary approaches to warfare." The silence stretched as the alien commanders considered his words. Davis could see them evaluating the idea from their different cultural perspectives. "It is madness," Bronze said finally. "Yes," agreed Knight. "Completely insane," added Stripe. "Exactly the kind of unpredictable strategy that might actually work," Grimm concluded. "The Devourers expect organic species to behave according to established patterns. This would be unprecedented." "So you're willing to try it?" "Human Colonel," Grimm said formally, "the Ashrak Dominion has learned much from your species. Perhaps it is time to put that learning to use. We will gather our fleets." "The Bloodclaw Syndicate fights beside its packmates," Stripe declared. "If humans and Ashrak stand against the ancient enemy, we stand with you." One by one, each species committed their forces to the unprecedented alliance. Davis felt a mixture of pride and terror as he realized what they were attempting. Over the next 2 weeks, ships began gathering at the coordinates Davis had designated in the contested void, a region of space that had been fought over by various species for centuries, but never claimed by any. The assembly grew into something that had never been seen before, a truly multi-species armada. Ashrak bioships sat alongside Bloodclaw raiders and Iron Scale battleships. Void Stalker stealth vessels drifted between human frigates and the exotic, craft of a dozen other warrior cultures. The logistics alone were a nightmare, with different atmospheric requirements, incompatible communication systems, and tactical doctrines that had evolved in isolation from each other. "Status report!" Davis called out as he toured the combined fleet in a small shuttle. "It's chaos, sir," reported his aide, Lieutenant Morgan. "The Bloodclaw want to organize hunting packs. The Iron Scale prefer mass formation attacks. The Void..." Stalkers think everyone else is too loud and obvious, and the Ashrak are trying to integrate biomechanical components with ships that weren't designed for them. What about the humans? We're doing what we do best, sir. Translating between different groups, finding common ground, and trying to make this impossible fleet actually work together. Davis nodded as he watched an Ashrak bioship carefully dock with a human supply vessel, exchanging technical data about weapon integration. Nearby, a group of Bloodclaw fighters were learning formation flying techniques from Iron Scale pilots, while Void Stalker stealth specialists shared sensor masking technology with anyone who could understand it. "It's working, isn't it?" Morgan observed. "They're actually cooperating." "Don't sound so surprised. We've been building toward this for months." The first Devourer scout ships appeared 3 days later, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system like dark harbingers of mechanical doom. Davis watched from the bridge of the Determination as the enemy vessels began their scanning. Routine. Ancient machines awakening to catalog new threats. "All ships, this is Colonel Davis. Remember, the key to this plan is unpredictability. No single species tactics. Everything we do has to be something the Devourers have never seen before." The response came in a chorus of different voices speaking different languages, but the meaning was universal. Understood and ready. The Devourer scouts advanced slowly, their black hulls absorbing light like mechanical voids. Davis had studied every piece of intelligence available about them, but seeing them in person was different. These weren't ships in any sense he understood. They were entities, artificial beings that had outlived entire civilizations. "Beginning Phase 1, Davis announced. What happened next would have been impossible just a year ago. Void Stalker stealth ships, invisible to most sensors, guided Bloodclaw raiders in perfect silence toward the Devourer scouts. But instead of using traditional Bloodclaw pack tactics, they were employing modified Ashrak biomechanical integration techniques, allowing the raiders to literally merge temporarily with the stealth vessels. The attack came from nowhere, combining stealth technology with pack-hunting instincts and biomechanical adaptation. The Devourer scouts, programmed to counter known organic tactics, found themselves facing something that didn't fit any of their stored combat patterns. 2 scouts were destroyed before they could even begin adaptive protocols. The third managed to send a warning signal before being overwhelmed by iron-scale heavy weapons fired from positions that should have been empty space. "Phase 1 complete," Davis reported. "All ships prepare for Phase 2. They know we're here now." The main Devourer fleet arrived within hours, emerging from hyperspace in perfect geometric formations that spoke of mechanical precision and inhuman intelligence. Davis counted over 200 vessels, each one larger than the biggest ships in his combined fleet. "All right," he said quietly. "This is what we came here to do. Show them something they've never seen before." The battle that followed would be remembered as the most chaotic engagement in galactic military history. Human coordination systems linked fighters from different species into integrated squadrons that changed tactics mid-flight. Ashrak bioships used Bloodclaw pack maneuvers to deliver iron-scale weaponry in formations that shifted like living things. Void Stalker stealth technology combined with human electronic warfare to create phantom fleets that appeared and disappeared across the battlefield. When the Devourers adapted to counter one species' tactics, they found themselves facing completely different approaches from unexpected directions. Davis watched from the command center as his impossible fleet danced through space, each ship playing its part in a symphony of organized chaos. The Devourers, for the first time in their ancient existence, were struggling to adapt fast enough to counter tactics that combined multiple evolutionary approaches to warfare. "Sir," Morgan called out, "the Devourers are falling back to regroup. Their adaptive protocols can't keep up with the tactical variations." Davis allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe this crazy plan actually had a chance. But the Devourers weren't retreating. They were learning. When they advanced again, their formations had changed. Instead of rigid geometric patterns, they moved in fluid groups that seemed to mirror organic tactics. They had absorbed the lessons of the first engagement and were beginning to counter the multi-species approach. "They're adapting faster now," Grimm reported from his bioship. "The ancient machines learned from each encounter." "Then we give them something new to learn from," Davis replied. "All ships implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was the most desperate part of their plan, something they had hoped they wouldn't need to use. It involved completely abandoning traditional fleet formations and turning the battle into something that resembled controlled chaos more than military engagement. Human ships began ramming devourer vessels, while Ashrak bioships attempted to infect them with organic viruses. Bloodclaw raiders used suicidal pack tactics to create openings for iron-scale heavy weapons, while Voidstalker stealth ships appeared inside enemy formations to deliver devastating surprise attacks. It was madness, but it was madness with purpose. The Devourers, programmed to understand and counter rational tactical decisions, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to be making choices based on emotion, loyalty, and sacrifice rather than pure military logic. "Colonel," Stripe's voice crackled over the communications, "my pack stands ready for final hunt. We die with honor beside packmates." "We all die with honor today," Bronze added, his iron-scale vessel glowing with the heat of overcharged weapons. "No," Davis said firmly. "We don't die today. We win today. All ships prepare for final phase." What happened next would puzzle military historians for generations. The combined fleet stopped trying to fight like a military force and started fighting like a family. Ships sacrificed themselves to protect vessels from other species. Crews abandoned their own damaged vessels to help repair ships they had never seen before. The Devourers, faced with tactical decisions that made no logical sense but were devastating in their effectiveness, finally encountered something their ancient programming couldn't adapt to: the irrational power of beings who fought not just for survival, but for each other. When the last Devourer ship finally fell, the combined fleet hung in space, battered and exhausted but victorious. They had done something that had never been accomplished in galactic history. They had defeated the ancient enemy through the power of unprecedented cooperation. Davis looked around his command center at the faces of his crew, all of them staring at the tactical display in amazement. They had won, but more than that, they had proven that the galaxy's warrior species could stand together against any threat. "All ships," he announced. "This is Colonel Davis. Today we have shown that strength comes not from fighting alone, but from fighting together. The bonds we have forged will not be broken by distance or time." The responses came in a dozen different languages, but the meaning was clear. The warrior species of the galaxy had found something worth fighting for together, and they would never be the same. The memorial service was Admiral Foster's idea, though she would later claim it was the most important decision of her military career. 6 months after the Battle of the Nine Suns, representatives from every species that had fought against the Devourers gathered in the Haven Point Memorial Garden, a space that hadn't existed before the war but somehow felt like it had always been there. Foster stood before the assembled crowd, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible just 2 years ago. Ashrak warriors sat beside Bloodclaw hunters, while Iron Scale soldiers shared seating with Voidstalker scouts. Human officers mingled freely with alien veterans, all of them wearing the small silver star that had become the universal symbol of the United Fleet. "We gather today not to celebrate victory," Foster began, her voice carrying across the silent garden, "but to remember those who made victory possible. The warriors who gave their lives so that organic civilization could continue to exist. The memorial itself was a work of art that could only have been created by multiple species working together. Ashrak biosculptors had grown living crystal formations that captured and reflected light in impossible patterns. Bloodclaw artisans had carved the names of the fallen in scripts from dozens of different worlds. Iron-scale metalworkers had forged eternal flames that would burn for centuries, while Void Stalker craftsmen had created areas of perfect silence where visitors could contemplate in peace. At the center of it all stood a simple human contribution, a bronze plaque with words in Bao, standard that had been translated into every known language. They died as strangers and were reborn as family. Foster watched as various species performed their traditional honors for the dead. The ceremony was supposed to last an hour, but no one seemed in any hurry to leave. Warriors who had lost packmates stood beside soldiers who had never met them in life, united in their shared grief and respect. "Admiral," came a familiar voice behind her. Foster turned to see War Leader Grimm approaching, his biomechanical armor gleaming in the memorial's eternal flames. "War Leader, how are your people adjusting to peacetime?" Grimm's expression was thoughtful, which Foster had learned to recognize as the Ashrak equivalent of deep contemplation. "We find ourselves changed by the experience of fighting beside others rather than against them. The Ashrak Dominion has begun establishing permanent cultural exchange programs with human colonies." "That's wonderful news. What kind of programs?" "Joint research projects, mostly. Your species' gift for seeing potential where others see only problems has inspired our scientists to explore new forms of biomechanical integration. We are also sharing our ship-growing techniques with human shipyards." Foster nodded, pleased but not surprised. The post-war period had been full of such developments. "And how is the integration going?" "Better than we dared hope. Human engineers understand the symbiotic relationship between pilot and ship in ways that even we had not fully explored. They ask questions we never thought to ask." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Hunt Leader Stripe, who had adopted the human custom of wearing military decorations on formal occasions. The Bloodclaw commander now sported a collection of medals from various species, each one representing a joint operation or cultural exchange program. "Admiral Foster, War Leader Grimm," Stripe greeted them with the slight bow that had become standard diplomatic protocol among the allied species. "I bring greetings from the Syndicate Council. Our pack leaders have voted to establish permanent hunting preserves for cultural education programs." "Hunting preserves?" Foster asked, not entirely sure she wanted to know. "Educational reserves, where young warriors from all species can learn traditional Bloodclaw hunting techniques, but also where Bloodclaw hunters can learn human tactical coordination and Ashrak biomechanical integration. The old ways of learning only from our own kind have proven limited." Foster smiled. The idea of multi-species military training programs had been discussed in diplomatic circles, but she hadn't expected the warrior cultures themselves to take the initiative. "There is more," Stripe continued. "The Syndicate has also voted to begin sharing our navigation data with the United Fleet. Our scouts have mapped regions of space that other species avoid. This knowledge should be available to all packmates." The conversation was joined by War Chief Bronze and Shadow Speaker Knight, along with representatives from several other species. Foster found herself in the middle of what amounted to an impromptu diplomatic conference with military leaders, discussing everything from joint training exercises to shared research projects. "The Iron Scale Collective has begun construction of a new shipyard in the neutral zone," Bronze reported. "It will be designed to accommodate vessels from all allied species. Human efficiency experts are helping us optimize the construction process. The Void Stalkers have agreed to share our stealth technology for defensive purposes," Knight added. "Human researchers have proposed applications we had never considered, including search and rescue operations and scientific exploration." Foster listened to the reports with growing amazement. The various species weren't just maintaining their wartime alliance, they were actively deepening it. The bonds forged in battle were becoming the foundation for something unprecedented in galactic history. "What about Earth?" Grimm asked. How do your homeworlds view these developments? Foster's expression grew more serious. There's been some resistance from traditionalist factions who worry about sharing too much human technology or becoming too dependent on alien allies. But the majority of Earth's population supports the alliance. The war showed us that isolation isn't safety, it's just delayed vulnerability. Our peoples face similar debates, Bronze admitted. Some iron-scale clans argue that we should return to our traditional isolation now that the immediate threat has passed. But the younger generation understands what we learned in battle. Strength comes from diversity of thought and approach. The Bloodclaw have always valued strength above all else, Stripe added. The Alliance has made us stronger than we ever were alone. Only fools abandon what makes them stronger. Knight nodded in agreement. The Void Stalkers have watched the galaxy from the shadows for millennia. We have seen civilizations rise and fall in isolation. This alliance represents something new. Civilizations rising together. Foster looked around at the alien commanders, these warriors who had become not just allies but friends. So what comes next? We've defeated the ancient enemy. We've proven that cooperation works. Where do we go from here? Forward, Grimm said, simply. There are regions of the galaxy that remain unexplored, sciences that remain unstudied, cultures that remain unknown. The combined knowledge and capabilities of our species could unlock possibilities none of us could achieve alone. Joint exploration missions, Bronze suggested. Mixed crews, shared discoveries. Cultural exchange programs for civilians, not just military personnel, Stripe added. Let our peoples learn from each other in peacetime as they did in war. And research, Knight said quietly. The Devourers were defeated, but they were not the only ancient mysteries in the galaxy. There are ruins, artifacts, entire civilizations that vanished long before any of our species reached the stars. Together we might finally understand what came before us. Foster felt a surge of excitement as she listened to their plans. The war had ended, but in many ways, their real adventure was just beginning. There's something else we need to discuss, she said carefully. Earth has authorized me to extend formal invitations to all allied species. We're planning a permanent diplomatic complex in the Sol system with facilities designed to accommodate representatives from every member species, a place where our peoples can work together on long-term projects. The reaction was immediate and positive. Foster had hoped for acceptance, but the enthusiasm surprised her. The Ashrak Dominion would be honored to establish a permanent presence in human space, Grimm said formally. As would the Bloodclaw Syndicate, Stripe added. Our young hunters could learn much from observing human society. One by one, each species committed to the diplomatic complex. Foster realized she was witnessing the birth of something that had never existed before. A truly multi-species political entity based on voluntary cooperation rather than conquest or subjugation. As the memorial service finally drew to a close, Foster found herself walking through the garden with her alien colleagues, discussing practical details of their emerging alliance. They talked about translation protocols, atmospheric requirements for the diplomatic complex, and the logistics of coordinating research projects across multiple star systems. But beneath the practical discussions, Foster sensed something deeper. These weren't just military allies or diplomatic partners anymore. Somewhere in the crucible of shared combat and mutual sacrifice, they had become something rarer and more valuable. They had become family. The memorial garden slowly emptied as various delegations prepared to return to their ships and home worlds. But Foster noticed that many of the warriors lingered, reluctant to end conversations that had become more than professional conferences. Admiral? Knight approached her as the crowd thinned. There is something the Void Stalkers wish to share with you privately. Foster followed the pale alien to a quiet corner of the garden, where Knight activated a small device that created a bubble of privacy around them. We have watched humanity for some time, Knight said quietly. Even before first contact, we observed your species from the shadows. We wanted to understand what made you different from other emerging civilizations. And what did you conclude? Most species, when they encounter something stronger than themselves, respond with fear or aggression. They see threats to be eliminated or challenges to be conquered. Your species does something unique. You see opportunities to learn and grow. Night paused, her luminous eyes reflecting the memorial's eternal flames. This gift, this ability to see potential where others see only problems, it is why the Alliance exists, why the warrior species trust you enough to work together. You showed us that our strength was not in our ability to fight others, but in our ability to fight beside each other. Foster felt the weight of those words. We couldn't have done any of this without all of you. Humanity's strength has always been our ability to adapt and learn from others. You've taught us things we never could have discovered on our own. Yes, but you taught us something more valuable. You taught us that being strong doesn't mean being alone. As Night disappeared back into the crowd, Foster stood alone in the memorial garden, thinking about the journey that had brought them all to this point. 2 years ago, humanity had been a minor species on the edges of galactic civilization. Now they were the cornerstone of an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. The stars above Haven Point seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself approved of what they had built together. Foster smiled as she watched the last of the alien ships prepare for departure, knowing that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, young warriors from different species were learning to fight together. Scientists were sharing discoveries that would have remained hidden without cooperation. Artists were creating works that combined the aesthetics of multiple civilizations. And in the diplomatic complex, being built in human space, representatives from dozens of species would soon gather to plan their shared future among the stars. Foster made her way back to her own ship, already planning the next phase of their incredible journey. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders they had yet to discover. But whatever they found out there, they would face it together. After all, they had learned the most important lesson of all. No one fights alone when they have family by their side.